During a press conference, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre strongly rebuked what he described as the media's fixation on government spending rather than outcomes. The exchange occurred when CBC reporter Ito Musa questioned whether the federal government's proposed $1.3 billion plan for border security was adequate and asked how much Poilievre himself would allocate if in power.
Ito Musa with CBC News. And Mr. Poilievre, if you could also answer this question in French as well as English. The government is coming out with a $1.3 billion plan to address border security. Do you think that's enough to stop Trump's tariffs? And if it was up to you, how much specifically would you spend on border security? What number would you put on it?
Well, you ask a classically CBC question, which is how much money can you spend on a problem? Well, that's the wrong question. That's exactly the question Trudeau has been asking for 9 years. It's the reason he's doubled our debt while making everything worse. So, for example, he spent $80 billion on housing affordability. Well, how'd that work? He doubled housing costs. He spent $60 million on his gun confiscation. 0 guns. He spent millions on a school food program that hasn't served a single solitary meal. So we should not judge a program based on how expensive we can make it. We should judge it by what it can do. How many helicopters? How many drones? How many boots on the ground? That's the question I will be asking when I'm Prime Minister. And how do we deliver it for the lowest possible price to taxpayers? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a Prime Minister who said, we secured the borders, we put more boots on the ground, we stopped tons and tons of fentanyl from traveling back and forth, we arrested the terrorists, we shut down the organized crime, we reduced gun crime, and by the way, we did it with less tax dollars. That's how our mentality has to change. We have to stop judging politicians by how expensive they can make things and start judging them by the results they get. You went into a restaurant and had a terrible experience. The food was awful. You got food poisoning. The service was bad. You wouldn't walk out and say, but it was great because it cost me $1,000. And because it's the most expensive restaurant around, it must be the best. No, we judge the meal by the food on the plate and the service that delivered it. That's how I'm going to run a common sense conservative government.
You ask a classically CBC question, which is how much money can you spend on a problem? Well, that's the wrong question. Poilievre responded, drawing a direct comparison to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's approach. Trudeau has been asking that question for 9 years, and the result is a double debt with no tangible improvements. Poilievre pointed to specific programs under Trudeau's leadership, such as an $80 billion housing initiative he claimed doubled housing costs, and a $60 million gun buyback plan that he said failed to confiscate any firearms. He argued for a common-sense conservative approach that prioritizes results over expenditures. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a prime minister who said, we secured the borders, stopped tons of fentanyl, reduced gun crime, and arrested terrorists, all while saving taxpayers' money? Poilievre stated. He criticized the perception that higher spending equates to better governance, likening it to overpaying for a substandard meal at a restaurant. Poilievre's remarks come amid ongoing debates about Canada's border security and its broader fiscal policies. His stance highlights a focus on measurable outcomes and efficient resource use, framing his critique as a direct challenge to liberal fiscal irresponsibility. In his broader messaging, Poilievre has also criticized media outlets for what he describes as biased reporting and reliance on federal subsidies. Advocating for greater independence, he has emphasized the need for accountability in both media and government operations. This exchange further cements Poilievre's strategy of positioning himself as a results-driven alternative to Trudeau's leadership.